Just for you to know, the chat box is disabled, but if you do have any questions, feel free to write it in the Q&A box that is below. So let's get started. So yeah, my name is Nikita Wadhwa. I'm the assistant manager for undergraduate services and pre-college advising at the Red Pen. In the Red Pen, we really work with individuals applying to global destinations. We work with students starting as early as grade 8 all the way through grade 12. So as just a little bit about the Red Pen, we have about 95% of our applicants who have received offers from top 3 choices. These students have been admitted to 15 plus countries, been given over $55 million in scholarship, and applied to 70 plus majors. And the reason we really want to highlight the majors and the countries is because that's really what we focus on. We focus on ensuring that we are able to find the best fit university for each student. So that doesn't mean focusing on common regions like the US, UK, and Canada, but really understanding what country, what major is the best fit for each student. So yeah, with regards to our track record, as you can see, we get students into colleges like the Ivies, which is the first row, Harvard, Yale, Penn, Cornell, Dartmouth. But then we also focus on a lot of other schools that are have niche interests. For example, Pratt, that focuses on students who want to apply for architecture. We have Barnard, which is an all-girls school. And then we also have students getting into sort of the Ivies of India, known as Ashoka and Blaksha. So yeah, like I said, I think 85% of have received offers from colleges. This is with regards to last year. 85 plus offers from selective colleges, including on many of the Ivy League schools and Oxbridge, which stands for Oxford and Cambridge in the UK. We've had $10 million plus dollars in scholarship. And I think, like I said, 95% received offers from their top 3 colleges with 70 plus unique majors from last year. Now, let's go a little bit deeper into our services. So like I said, we start as early as grade 8. And this is the reason we start as early as grade 8, specifically for some of our competitive schools, is because there's a lot that needs to get covered in terms of building a student's profile and just allowing a student to understand what it is that they want to study at college. So as early as grade 8, our focus is really exploration. So understanding at this point, what is it academically and non-academically that a student is interested in? And we sort of help students explore through joining clubs, organizations, doing online courses, and different activities basically outside of the classroom. Once students have spent time exploring in grade 8, grade 9 really gets all about personalization. So this is where we want to focus on now all the activities that I've explored, what has really caught the interest of the student. So what are those 3 to 4 activities that the student identifies in and that starts to fit with the student's personal storyline? I think as many people know here, colleges start looking at a student's profile starting grade 9. So that's why it's really important to start personalizing your profile as early as grade 9. And then grade 10 is all about elevation. So now that we've identified those 3 to 4 activities, how can we now elevate them, right? Can we get students to engage in leadership initiatives? Can we have them execute in-depth projects? So grade 10 is really all about elevating the profile, elevating your interests. This can be done in multiple ways through passion projects, through competitions, through online courses, through research. And then grade 11 is really the stage where we get into curation. Here we're basically curating the application towards the higher education goal. So when someone comes to us in grade 11, unfortunately, there's not much time for exploration. We really need to make sure that the academic interest has been identified, and that once that interest is identified, we have built the profile strongly for that academic interest. And then lastly, grade 12 is all about execution, putting everything together, telling your unique story, and executing your application. And this can be done through, ensuring that your resume is finalized, your letters of recommendations are in place, your application forms are filled in, your essays now fit all with the overall story. and just the applications are sent out. So through this process, we have two teams that work with our students. Our pre-college advising team works with students starting grade 8 all the way through grade 10. And our undergraduate team works with students starting grade 11 all the way through grade 12. So how hard is it really to get into an Ivy League college? I think this is a great graph and an understanding of how selective these schools can be and how we have in the past sort of been successful with some of these colleges. So as you can see, I mean, most of the colleges are below an 8% admit rate, and this is their overall admit rate. We're not even looking at just the international students, which happens to usually be a fraction of the number, right? So, I mean, we have Harvard that is as low as 3.4%. But as you can see, and one of the reasons we don't have any data for Princeton is because last year Princeton did not choose to report their admission rates. So we don't have any data for that. But as you can see across the border, we've sort of had a lot of success with certain schools like Yale, Penn, and Dartmouth. One of the reasons we've not had, one of the reasons we actually saw a low number for Brown is something I'll actually discuss in future slides. So what are the components of the US application process? There are three main components: data, voice, and talent. What is data? Data is all your academic scores, right? So what are your college prep grades, the strength of your curriculum? I mean, this is something that really, really matters to colleges. For example, are you doing the IB? Are you doing the A levels? Are you doing an international curriculum that is recognized by the university? The standardized test scores, and in general, the overall grades. They look at grades starting grade 9 and all the way through grade 12. So the data is the most important component for any competitive university in the US. Now, that being said, there are many universities in the US where you can have strong data and not such a strong voice and talent box and still get in. But when we're talking about the Ivy League schools, we need to make sure that all these three buckets are extremely strong. So voice is really what comes into control of the student during the application stage. Now, what does voice mean? Voice is the teacher recommendations. Usually we recommend 2 teachers and 1 counselor recommendation. The essays, which are your Common App essays and your supplementary essays, the application form and resume. I mean, the application form has multiple components that the student can really add value to. For example, the activity section, the additional information section, and then the last bit being the demonstrated interest, right? What is demonstrated interest? It's a student showing a college how interested they are in actually attending the university if they are to get in. So this can be done through multiple ways. It can be done through joining webinars, talking to admissions officers, etc. Now, when we come to the talent bucket is really what we start focusing on early on, starting grade 8. So the talent bucket includes all your extracurriculars. What have you done from grade 8 all the way through grade 12 in terms of extracurriculars? What are your unique talents? Have you done a lot of leadership initiatives, right? What are the big leadership components on your resume? And then the last one being context. So once you've done all of this, it's really important that the people in your school know about everything that you're doing outside of school. For example, the counselor recommendation holds a lot of weight and is extremely, extremely important when it comes to the application process. So students really need to make sure that their counselors know of what they're doing outside of school so that these things can be contextualized, right? Who is the student within the school community? The counselor really needs to know this. And then this other bucket basically is something that's not really in the control of the student. Factors such as financial aid that can impact an admission, legacy status. I mean, many students whose parents have gone to universities sometimes do tend to have a higher chance of getting in. Institutional priorities, this is something that relates back to Brown and why we saw not such a high admission rate this year. Basically, institutional priorities are what is the institution prioritizing in the year of application. So this year, Brown wanted to, they went need blind, which means that they did not consider need when admitting a student. So for them, they really started to prioritize getting students from more rural areas versus urban areas, and which is why we didn't see a very high admission rate for a lot of our students. And then the last one being demographics. So what really is it that Ivy League colleges are looking for? There are 8 of these colleges we've identified right now, okay? And each of them I need and want something different. So it's not that every single student is going to have the perfect profile for every single Ivy League college, right? So after doing a lot of research, after seeing our own admit rates, after speaking to admissions officers, we've sort of identified these one words that fit really well with each of the Ivies. So with Princeton, it's something that's called visionary. So Princeton has all their seniors do a senior thesis, and the senior thesis is all about sort of creating new knowledge, tying in ideas, and really being a visionary, right? Columbia is all about being a thinker. Columbia is actually known for their core curriculum, which is a very classic core curriculum that you have to do no matter what major you apply to besides engineering. And this sort of core curriculum is a common intellectual platform for students to think in a cross-disciplinary way. So someone who they really focus on producing thinkers. Harvard, as we all know, wants to produce leaders, someone who's really made an impact in their community and thinks beyond the basics. Yale is all about being a connector. So Yale is actually known for their residential college system, which connects students in special ways, and students are encouraged to collaborate with each other. Cornell is all about problem solving. Actually, the tagline, I think, of the university is any student, any study. They have a very, very hands-on academic environment. Dartmouth is all about collaboration. Dartmouth is actually a very tight-knit community because of the environment. It's in a very rural area. There's not much to do outside of the college, and as a result, they focus a lot on collaboration within the community. Brown is all about their open curriculum, and they really want students to put together unique and unconventional ideas. So they really sort of pride themselves on being trailblazers. And then the last one is Penn. Penn's reputation is really known for producing doers, someone who has an idea, who can take the idea out in the real world and really get something done. And I think there are 2 really nice quotes, honestly, one from Harvard, which is, have you taken full advantage of your opportunity? So Harvard really focuses on what is the student doing outside of their classroom, who are they within their community, and have they taken advantage of their community? So if their community is very limited, have they done something creative with their community? If the community has a lot of opportunities, which are the opportunities that students have really taken advantage of? And the other quote, which we really love, is from MIT, which is not obviously an Ivy, but is still extremely, extremely competitive. And they actually say that we do not admit test scores, we admit people. And what they're really focusing on here is that while those scores are super important, they're really focused on who is the person, what is the holistic profile. So what does it mean now to really challenge yourself? I think there are 3 areas that you really need to focus on, that students need to focus on. One is core subjects, right? So taking core subjects like math, history, English, lab sciences are very, very important. Subjects like psychology, business studies are not necessarily considered as core subjects. So it's very important to ensure that you have your core subjects in place. The second is academic elevation. So now once you've taken all these core subjects, how can you elevate your profile? Through APs, through dual enrollment credit courses, Olympiads, research papers? Can you engage in summer programs that are academic? And then the last bucket sort of being extracurriculars, right? So what are you doing outside of the school? Are you doing internships? What kind of leadership are you engaging in? Sports, art, music, community service, personal projects. So these are the 3 buckets that students need to focus on to really challenge themselves. And to really now go sort of a little deeper into that extracurricular bucket, how does one really focus on building their profile? So there are 3 things, again, that we like to say. One is integration, right? So how does what you're doing fit into your overall story? If you're someone who's interested in psychology and music, right? Are you just doing things that are individual to those interests, or are you doing things that tie those interests together? Are you writing a research paper on music therapy? So how are you really fitting together your interests and sort of creating this cohesive story that paints a picture about yourself? Continuity is really important. They like to see that activities are done over a longer period of time. It's not like you come in grade 11 and you realize that that all of a sudden that I need to do, okay, I need to do research, so let me randomly pick up this research project and do it. I think colleges are very aware of students that are engaging in activities for the sake of it versus actually engaging in an activity that is continuous and over a long period of time. And then the last one is really relevance, right? Is this activity relevant to you? Is this activity relevant to your community? So that's sort of the third aspect of how to build your profile. So something that I really want to get into now are case studies of some of our past Ivy League admits, to sort of show you how we've used all these things that I spoke about and help students get admitted to some of their top choices. So let's first look at Harvard's historical number of applications, right? So as you can see, historically, starting 2020, there's been about 40,000 applicants. And now in 2023, we're up to about 56,000 applicants. But the students that are being admitted are more or less the same number, which means that the process is just starting to get more and more competitive, right? As late as 2023, which is last year, I think the percentage of students being admitted to Harvard was 3.5%. And the students that we really work with, our international students, are just a fraction of that number. So like about 0.5 or 0.6% of our international students end up getting into schools like Harvard. So what did we do with one of our successful students? So we want you to meet one of our students who was a Harvard applicant who wanted to major in government. So just the basics about his profile, I think like I sort of spoke about in the bucket of like data, talent, and voice, you can see that his data is very, very strong. Got a 44 out of 45, had a 35 out of 36 ACT, which is great. And now if we look at what Harvard really likes, if you look at those sort of one words that I discussed, in terms of Harvard, they really want to sort of produce leaders. So this student had led 35 plus MUNs, and not only had the student led MUNs, and not only had the student won the Best Delegate Award, co-chaired MUNs, but the student had really changed the way MUN took place at their school and made it a more collaborative activity. So this student really took that activity, led the activity, and then actually changed the way the activity took place. So that really showed a lot of initiative on the students' part. And then if we think about those three things that we spoke about, right? Integration, continuity, and fitting together in the community. In terms of the core subjects that the student took, the student took 4 core HLs and online courses. Now, this really shows academic rigor. Okay, the student also wanted to show academic elevation through co-authoring a paper on social impact. And then the student wanted to show the ability to engage in the community by starting an initiative that digitized 30 plus local businesses. So the students sort of engaged in an activity that was relevant to the academic interest, but that also had a very large community impact. And this is one of our students we saw being successful at Harvard. Let's go sort of a little further now, look at Penn. So historically, Penn, similar to Harvard, has had a very low acceptance rate. I think it's similar, where it's about 3.54%. And as you can see here as well, from 2020 to 2023, the number of students applying to schools like Penn has increased from 42,000 all the way to 60,000. So now, what did we really do with our student? So I think something that really stood out about our student for Penn was, in general, when the student came to us, it was an innate curiosity and constant questioning, constant desire to learn. The student also was very, very specific about the academic interest. So VIPER stands for the Integrated Program for Energy Research at UPenn. And the student not only came in with an idea of wanting to study chemical engineering, but came in with an idea of wanting to focus on energy research within chemical engineering. Okay. And so similar to Harvard, the student did have a great predicted score, was a 42 out of a 45, and a very, very strong SAT score of 1530. And I think the way the student really demonstrated rigor is the student took the most, I would say, rigorous combination of subjects for his HL, which is physics, chemistry, math. And this is really a subject combination that a lot of the Ivy League schools really do value. And in addition to that, the way the student showed academic elevation was by participating in a lot of Olympiads. Now, a little different from our previous student, this student had a lot, I would say a lot more holistic, the profile was. So the student, in terms of engaging in the academic interest, showed that by interning at multiple companies within the energy sector. The student also led a lot of tech training programs in clubs and organizations, which means that he was really, really involved in his community and in bettering the community. I think these tech training programs were around improving the basic computer literacy skills for a lot of the underserved community. And then lastly, the student consistently participated in music and sport. And when I say consistent, it was not even starting grade 9, but all the way through, I think, as early as grade 6. So as you can see here, the student had a very holistic profile with a very, very specific interest that worked for UPenn. So what really worked for both of our students? The first thing actually that I didn't touch upon was the Common App essay for both the students, which was really interesting because the Common App essay actually wasn't about an activity, rather it highlighted a personal quality of the student. So we actually like to say that many students think that they need to list their resumes in essays, but for many of these competitive applications, colleges just want to know who you are and how you're going to fit within their community. So their Common App essay, I think, really spoke to each of their personalities. The next thing is both these students actually ended up participating in quite a few academic competitions. I think this is something that's quite underrated. A lot of students do it, but don't know how important it is. Academic elevation and showing an ability to participate and obviously rank and do well in an international competition is very, very important for Ivy League schools. The third thing is both of them came in with a very strong clarity on what they wanted to study. So they didn't come in undecided. They knew what they wanted to study, and we were really able to build their profile for that academic interest. And then I think the last thing was that everything fit really well for their entire story in terms of their subject selection, fit with their essays, that fit with their activities, that fit with the entire Common App form. And I think this Common App form is actually something that's very, very important when it comes to Ivy League schools. People think about applications as individual components, but for many of the competitive schools, they sit and they really look at that 10-page document, which is your Common App form. So everything sort of needs to tie in together and sort of fit in and make a lot of sense. So that's sort of it from my side. If there are any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to do that. And I'm just going to open up the Q&A box. I think someone asked about music, vocal, maths, and physics. I'm not sure if you're asking about a specific interest of a student, but if you are, yeah, math and physics is a great combination of academic subjects for students. Math and physics obviously opens up a lot of doors in terms of academic areas such as computer science, mathematics, physics itself, pure science. And then having a unique talent or an interest like music can really, I think, bring something interesting to a student's story. But yeah, I think that's the only question that I see for now. Are there any other questions that I can answer regarding the presentation? Can you please elaborate on how to know what we want to become in the future? Also, does public speaking count as an extracurricular? Okay, so elaborating on how you want to be, what you want to be in the future. Interesting question. I think a lot of students that come in, like I said, sometimes come in undecided. There are many ways of understanding what you want to do in the future. I think one of the most tried and tested ways is really just engaging yourself in activities that interest you. So start off with what interests you, engage in those activities, and then see what you feel you excel in, is what I would say. And yes, public speaking definitely does count as an extracurricular activity. And it's actually quite an important extracurricular activity for US universities. Um, can you please talk about the Common App form? What exactly is that? Yes. So the Common App form is the Common App application system for US universities. So it's the form that you have to fill out in order to apply to more or less any university in the US. This form includes things like you have to include personal details, your educational qualifications, your honors, activities you've engaged in, your essays, any other additional information that you want to share. So it's just the form that you have to fill in to submit in order to apply to a university. What are options available for kids in the commerce line after 12th standard? So it really depends. So I think students who take commerce, that focuses more on, I would say, math, economics. I would say those are the two subjects that I've seen very commonly that students apply for US universities. But also you can apply for many of the programs which don't have very stringent prerequisites, right? So for example, a program like psychology or communications will not necessarily have a prerequisite of doing a science. So commerce students can, opt for doing sort of math, economics, or then go into a lot of the arts at university. Does physics HL, math HL, economics HL, chem SL show rigor? So physics, math, eco. Yes, it does, because economics is also considered to be a core subject. So what is not considered to actually be a core subject is business studies, but economics is. So physics, math, economics would be considered rigorous, with chemistry as a SL. That's a great combination of subjects. Can you suggest colleges for research and product development? There are a lot of colleges for research in the US. I mean, honestly, more or less all the Ivy League schools that we spoke about do conduct or have quite a big amount of research that's being conducted. I think something that I also shared with one of the Ivy Leagues was Princeton. That Princeton has a senior thesis that they require all their students to work on, and not many colleges do that. So Princeton actually has a very, very big focus on research. And then there are also many of the larger research institutes in the US. I mean, like many of the UC schools, UC Santa Barbara, UC Berkeley, University of Michigan, that will have a lot of research being conducted. You had mentioned participating in Olympiads, just participating or getting very high ranks. Good question. Definitely ranking is going to be very, very important. The two students that we spoke about and that I shared case studies of had definitely won medals or ranked in their Olympiads. That's definitely very important. But regardless, even engaging in an Olympiad is going to show academic elevation or interest, and showing that you're pushing yourself. But ranking is going to be very, very important for those top Ivy League schools. What is the Lumiere site and how will it help me in research? Lumiere is a research organization started by, I think, a student that was in Harvard. So basically what Lumiere does is that it connects high school students with professors, assistant professors at universities, and you select a topic or an area that you want to research, and you actually just conduct that research with that assistant professor, and the professor sort of helps you in conducting the research. Depending on when you start with Lumiere, if it's super early, you can actually end up publishing your research as well. I think that is all the questions for now. If there aren't any others, I can wait like maybe a minute if there are any other questions. But yeah. Should I start with something in the 11th? So it really depends. I would say if you've sort of narrowed down on your academic interest in the 11th grade, then it's definitely okay to start something that's related to that. The time in which we don't say to just start something random in the 11th grade is if you pick up like I guess a random musical instrument or a sport. Maybe that shows that it's not something that's been an old interest, it's a new interest. And that being said, it's not bad to show that you're interested in engaging in new activities. But what we want to focus on is that at least on your, if at least on your resume, there's a bunch of continuous activities, then in showcasing that you want to do something new in the 11th grade isn't bad. But again, it has to, I think, tie back and fit into your overall story. So again, if you're not applying, if I mean, I'm trying to think, if music is not a part of your story at all, maybe it's not that important to start a musical instrument in the 11th grade. What does need sensitive mean? I think you mistook, it's not need sensitive, it's need blind. And so what need blind means is that many universities in the US, and for international students, I think there are about 7 to 8 need blind universities, which will not consider a family's requirement for financial aid when taking a decision on their application. So many times what happens with international students is if they apply for financial aid, it actually can hamper your ability for getting into that university, especially if they do not give a lot of aid to international students. But if you apply for a need blind school, they're not going to take that into consideration. So they're purely going to look at you as an applicant. And if they admit you based on your application and on the criteria that they want, and if you're then applied need blind, then they will provide you the aid that is required. Can you please tell me more about Lumiere? I think so. Yeah, like I said, Lumiere is a research organization. What Lumiere does, like I said, is especially for, so research isn't actually for all students, and research also makes sense a lot for certain majors. So for example, for a lot of the STEM majors, we see that students like to do and engage in research. So if, for example, a student is in an IB program, and if they're doing an extended essay in something related to psychology that interests them, they can actually further that interest by conducting research outside of school with a research organization like Lumiere, where the student partners with an assistant professor to conduct research on a topic that interests them, right? So for example, what does body positivity mean? If a student focuses, is sort of interested on learning more about eating disorders, can they conduct research on body positivity and social media and how that impacts eating disorders? So you pick a topic, you let your assistant professor know about that topic, your mentor know about that topic, and then you can conduct research with your mentor. And the end product should be a research paper. And that is what is most important. Is it important to have at least 10 activities, or even 7 is good if they fit well into your story? So the Common App form does give you space for 10 activities. You should definitely fill in those 10 activities, especially if we're looking at applying to the competitive universities in the US. That being said, if we're not looking at the top tier or the most competitive universities, and if you have 7 really, really strong activities, I would say that that's fine. But usually we do suggest in some way that we are able to sort of fill up those 10 activity spots in the Common App form. Please share names of need blind universities for international students. So at the top of my head, I know a lot of the Ivy League schools are need blind. I know Amherst is also need blind, and there's another school called Bowdoin that is need blind. I'm not 100% sure about all the names, but it's something as easy as you can put it on Google and you'll find the 7 to 8 names of the need blind universities. Are the free computer AI courses available on the internet of high value? Yes, it is of high value, but again, it depends on how it fits in your story. So if a student is just signing up for courses for the sake of signing up for courses, then no, it's not going to be of high value. But if it's something that you're truly interested in learning about, if it's something that, so for example, if you're taking computer science at school and you want to understand more about it and learn more about the subject, and hence you're taking these courses, and now you're using that theoretical knowledge, you're applying it practically in a project, you're writing about it in your essays, then it will hold high value. But it's not going to hold high value just for doing the courses. It has to, again, fit in with the whole story.
Nikita, I'm not sure if others are able to hear you. I'm not able to hear you. May, I'm sorry, Nikita is just joining, but while she's reconnecting, she got logged off. I just want to thank everyone, and my apologies to Ankita and the team, the people who could not join. Really sorry about that. We will be open to taking one-on-one appointments or any group discussion. Nikita is back. I'm going to let her wind up and finish and end the session. Thanks, Nikita. And please share your number and email for anyone who would like to have any one-on-ones with us later.
Yes, of course, I would be happy to do that. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And yeah, any other questions that you have, I will be happy to answer them personally on an appointment. And thank you, Fiki, for having us as well.